I was only a child when I first heard the name of the man who would shape my destiny. Richard the Lionheart, King of England, Lord of Normandy, Duke of Aquitaine, the warrior ruler whose name thundered across continents. To the world, he was a lion. To England, he was a symbol. But to me, he was the man whose choices changed the course of my entire life. My father had served under Richard during the campaigns in France. Long before I was born, he carried scars from battles no one spoke of. And every night, when the fire dimmed, he would whisper stories about the king. Not the stories written in books or told by poets, real stories, born from blood and loyalty. He was fearless, father would say. Fearless, enough to stand alone, even when the world turned against him. Fearless. The word lived in me long before I ever understood what it meant. When I turned 17, the world changed. England was buzzing with preparation for the Great Crusade, a holy war that promised glory and death. King Richard himself had called for men to join him. Banners fluttered across towns. Priests preached destiny. Young men sharpened their swords and their dreams. And my father, he volunteered again. I still remember the night before he left. We sat by the hearth, the flames dancing like spirits. He handed me a ring, a simple silver band, marked with the Lionheart seal. "If I do not return," he said, "you must find him. Find the king. He is the only man who understands the cost of loyalty." I didn't understand. I didn't want to understand. I only knew I was losing him. He left at dawn. I waited for his return. I waited for 3 years. But the man who returned was not my father. He was a messenger, trembling, exhausted, carrying a dusty bag filled with personal belongings of fallen soldiers. My father's ring was inside, his shield crest, and a note sealed with the king's symbol. The note was only one sentence: "He died with honor." It was just 4 words. 4 words that haunted me. Grief has a strange way of turning into purpose. One morning, I woke up with a decision burning in my chest. I would go to the king. I would ask him what really happened. Not just for closure, but for truth. England was restless when I set out. Taxes had risen to fund the war. Rumors whispered that the king had been taken prisoner on his way back to England, that he was held in a distant land, that he might never return. The Lionheart was a legend, but legends are not free from cages. I traveled through forests, towns, and muddy roads until I reached London. The city felt tense, wrapped in fear. King Richard's brother, Prince John, had taken control in the king's absence, and the people did not trust him. Some said he wanted the king to remain lost forever. When I reached the royal court, I learned the truth. The king was not missing. He was captured. A ransom had been demanded, an impossible amount of silver, more than England had ever paid for a single man. But King Richard was not a single man. He was the heart of England. I joined the band of loyalists, working in secret to gather the ransom. Days turned into nights, and nights into weeks. Every coin collected felt like a victory. Every failure felt like betrayal. Among the loyalists was a woman named Eleanor, sharp-faced, confident, brave. She had once served as a healer in the king's army. She told me stories no ballad ever dared to share. "Richard was not perfect," she said one night, as we walked along the Thames, "but he carried something most rulers lack. Honor. It weighed on him, heavier than armor." Then she looked at me, her eyes soft. "Your father believed in him. That means something." Her words lit a fire inside me. Months passed. Winter came with biting winds. England had a choice: sacrifice everything to bring back the king, or abandon him and accept Prince John as ruler. Not everyone chose loyalty. Once, late at night, we were ambushed by men loyal to Prince John. In the chaos, Eleanor saved my life, dragging me into the shadows. We escaped across the river with only minutes to spare. The next day, we learned that our collection vault had been robbed. The ransom was slipping out of reach. But England refused to give up. Women donated their jewelry. Farmers offered their savings. Monks melted silver from church chalices. Children brought coins they had secretly saved. It felt like the entire kingdom breathed with one heart. Finally, the impossible ransom was complete, and a group of envoys, including Eleanor and me, set out across Europe to deliver it. The journey was brutal. Snowstorms, thieves, border guards, demanding bribes. But we pushed on. We reached the fortress, where Richard was imprisoned, a stone giant, towering over the frozen land. The man who ruled half of Europe was locked behind iron bars, guarded by soldiers who feared him, even in chains. I expected to see a broken man. Instead, I saw a lion, pacing in silence. His hair had grown long, his beard was wild, but his eyes were the same, fierce blue the song spoke of. When he stepped into the torchlight, I felt the weight of his presence. He looked at us, at the chests of silver we carried, and then at me. "Your face is familiar," he said. His voice was gravel and thunder. I swallowed hard. "My father served under you. He died in the crusade." Richard's jaw tightened. A shadow crossed his face. "Many brave men did." "I came for the truth," I said. "Why did he die? Was his death worth anything?" The king stepped closer until he stood only inches from me. "What is your name?" "Thomas." "Thomas," he repeated, as though tasting the weight of it. "Your father. He saved my life." The room fell silent. "He shielded me when the Saracens ambushed us. He took the blow meant for me. I carried him to safety myself. He asked for only one thing: that England survive, whether I lived or died." My throat tightened. My father had saved the king, and the king had remembered. Richard reached into his cloak, a chain, a lion pendant, carved from pure gold. "I meant to send this," he said softly, "but captivity steals more than freedom, it steals time." He placed the chain in my hand. "I owe him my life, and I owe England my return." The king left the prison with his head held high, the guards stepping back as though standing before a storm. Outside, the wind howled through the mountains, like a chorus of spirits welcoming the lion home. The journey back to England was filled with cheering crowds, church bells, and celebrations. But the greatest storm awaited us at home. Prince John had seized the throne. When Richard arrived in London, the people flooded the streets. The city roared with life. Men climbed rooftops just to glimpse the Lionheart. Women cried with joy. Even the bells of Westminster seemed to ring with pride. Richard faced his brother in silence. No shouts, no threats, just a cold, piercing stare. "You sat on my throne," Richard said. John trembled. "You are forgiven," the king said, "but you will never rule while I live." England breathed again. For months after his return, I served in the royal court. I saw the king rise before dawn. I saw him lead armies, negotiate with lords, rebuild alliances. He was relentless, driven by something deeper than ambition: honor, duty, legacy. But legends do not last forever. One spring morning, news spread across the castle like wildfire. The king had been struck by a crossbow during a siege in France. The wound, though small, had turned deadly. When I reached him, he was lying on a bed of linen, pale but proud. "Thomas," he whispered, "you brought me home once. Now, let me go home again." I knelt beside him, tears burning my eyes. "You were the king England needed," I said. He smiled faintly. "No, I was only a man who tried to be worthy of his people." That night, Richard the Lionheart died, leaving behind a kingdom, a legend, and an unfinished story. I carried his pendant for years afterward, not because it was gold, but because it reminded me of the truth behind every crown. A king is not measured by how he rules, but by the lives he touches, the loyalty he inspires, and the hearts he leaves behind. England still tells his story, and I still whisper mine.